Hi there, welcome to Microsoft Azure Training Series. My name is Neeraj Kumar. I'm a cloud evangelist and enterprise architect, and I will be your instructor for this course. Hey there, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on wherever you are joining this session from. This is part 3 of the Managing Identity and Access in Azure Active Directory, and this module is about securing your application by using OpenID Connect and Azure Active Directory. In the past 2 sessions, we had been discussing on understanding the security, responsibility, and trust in Azure, and also discussed on creating and managing users and groups in Azure AD, which actually helped in laying the foundation to managing identity and access in Azure AD. We discussed about the layered security approach using the Azure Security Center, data encryption, role-based access control, external user accounts, and their permissions as well. We will keep this module short and sweet. In this module, we are going to extend our knowledge from our previous session to learn about the modern authentication used in Azure Active Directory. We will register and deploy our application to show how authentication and authorization works in Azure using OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect, which are part of the modern authentication. You can watch this video separately as a how-to related to modern authentication, but in case you have not already gone through the previous modules, I would highly recommend you to visit those videos to have a clear understanding and a solid base to managing identity and access in Azure Active Directory. Throughout our course, we had been discussing about security in Azure using identities, accounts, and their roles, which is the basis for securing the application and organizational data. There are many different options to achieve your goals in securing those identities in your application. As an architect or as an administrator, it is your responsibility to opt for the best security solution so that your end users have the best possible experience and feel confident about the application. When we are talking about Azure, we have the Azure Active Directory, which is the identity and the access management service. It actually provides a complete set known as the identity as a service. Best part is that it supports the industry standard protocols, which are OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect. It provides the ability for a complete set of identity related tasks such as identity protection, identity governance, and MFA, which is the Multi-Factor Authentication. Let us now try to understand these 2 standards that we just discussed. So the first one is the OAuth 2.0. It actually provides the authorization flow for your application. It can be a web application or a desktop application or even a mobile application for that matter. To be precise, this specification was designed for authorization of the application purposes only and does not have the authentication mechanism built. It works very well for the authorization of server-to-server communication. You can take an example of, say, Facebook or even LinkedIn, where you want the user data to be brought in as claims. In this case, we can use the capabilities of OAuth to securely communicate the user data. Then we have the OpenID Connect. We have been witnessing a huge amount of server-to-server communication and exchange of user data between large application platforms. In order for the users to have a single sign-on experience, reducing the need for signing in again and again when switching to different application platforms, that led to the development of OpenID Connect. It is actually an authentication layer which is built on top of OAuth 2.0. which we just discussed. So OpenID Connect provide 2 things. One is the access token and the other one is the ID token signed by the identity provider using the private key. This ID token is sent to the application providing a valid identity. It is a JSON Web Token, abbreviated as JWT, which is again an international industry standard. They are validated by the application using the public key. I hope it is now clear to you on how the authentication and authorization works in Azure AD using the international standards. But don't worry, you will understand it better when we get into a demo and I show you how exactly it works. Before we jump into the demo to see actually how authentication and authorization works in Azure Active Directory using the so-called modern authentication, let us brush up our knowledge what we gained from our previous sessions, and this is related to adding custom domain. Why do we need to discuss this again? Because we will try to register an app in our custom domain and then add users to it so that these external users, the B2C users actually, can connect and authenticate and authorize themselves for using the application that we register. So the first thing is, when we sign up for a new Azure account and create a new subscription, we are provided with an initial domain name, and that is unique to your account. This has a format of, say, your organization name or your domain name.onmicrosoft.com. Remember, I had that aqtcsl gmail.onmicrosoft.com. This cannot be changed. In case you want to have your own domain name and have the users use that instead for signing in and performing activities, then you can add your own domain. It is easy and more familiar to your users. Basic requirement is that you should have a domain name registered with a registrar. So it was a 3-step process that we took to add the custom domain name. The first one was adding the custom domain name in the Azure Active Directory. And the second one was to add the DNS information to the domain registrar. And the third and the final one was to verify your custom domain. We can add as many domain names in Azure AD as we want, but each new domain added will have its own TXT record or the MX record, which needs to be added to the DNS information of that domain registrar for the verification purposes. There can be certain issues that you might face, but those are not actually issues. For example, wait at least for an hour and then try again, or make sure that the DNS record is correct, or make sure that the domain name is not already in use in another directory. There can also be instances where your users have activated the Power BI through self-service sign up and created an unmanaged tenant for your organization. In that case, you will have to forcefully take over that tenant, which can be done using the PowerShell. In this demo, we are going to see how OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect works for the authentication and authorization. So for the same, we are going to create a B2C tenant, and then we are going to register a B2C application. Once that has been done, we are going to create the identity providers, and these identity providers, one will be the Azure Active Directory and the other one we will be creating a Facebook app. And then we will try to see how these two different options work as the identity providers. Let's get started. So here I am on my Azure portal, and the first thing I'm going to do is to check the subscription. What I'll do is I'll see which users have what kind of a permission on this subscription. So I'm on my Azure subscription, which is Azure subscription 1. I'll go to access control, and there I'll look into the role assignments. If I scroll down a little, I see that there are two users. One is Neeraj Kumar and the other one is Ritu Kumar. These two users have contributor permissions on subscription. So that means that they can create any kind of resource inside this subscription. So going forward, I'm going to log out of this Azure portal and log in using the Ritu Kumar's account. So here I'll provide the username and the password, and I am on the Azure portal again. If you see, the name reflects Ritu Kumar correctly. And now I'll go to the Azure Active Directory. So I'll click on Azure Active Directory, and there I am in the Azure AD. Now if you check here, I have the Azure AD Premium P2 account and my domain name is kurari.com. This Azure AD Premium we worked in our last demo. Now we will be creating a tenant. So for that, I'll click on Create a Tenant, and on the page for Create a Directory, I will be choosing Azure Active Directory B2C because we are going to create a B2C tenant. So I'll click on it and then click on Next Configurations. On the configurations page, we are going to provide the organization name, which is Kurari B2C. And for the initial domain name, I'll just copy paste the same name. so that it creates the domain name with the name of kurarib2c.onmicrosoft.com. I'll keep the country or the region as United States. I'll scroll down a little. The Azure subscription is already selected. I'll choose the resource group name as ATCSL, and once that has been done, I'll click on for the review and create. Once the review has passed, then we will click on create to finally deploy it. Oops. So we ran into the problem which says that the subscription is not registered to use the namespace Microsoft.Azure Active Directory. This happens when this Microsoft.Azure Active Directory namespace is not registered. So for this, we need to go to PowerShell and register this namespace with our subscription. So we are going to connect to Azure Active Directory account. We will type in connect-az account. And we will also pass in the parameter use device authentication. It will ask us to go to a particular URL for the device login, and then it also gives us some authorization code which we need to paste there for our PowerShell to get connected. So after we have done that, I'll choose the account name, and then it will ask me to close the browser, and the PowerShell window will get connected to our subscription. Next is we are going to use the command register AZ resource provider, and here we will pass in the parameter provider namespace, and we will pass on the same namespace which is Microsoft.Azure Active Directory. Now you see that the namespace has been registered. These are practical problems you see, and you might also run into this kind of a situation, so you need to know what needs to be done. So we will repeat the process again, and we'll provide the organization name, the initial domain name, and once that has been done, we will review and create. And after the review has passed, we will click on the create button again. So it shows as validation passed, and we will click on create. So this time it did not show any error, and the deployment is in progress. So it will take some time. We will pause the video and return back once it is done. So the directory has been created. We can click on the link to directly go to the tenant. It will open a new window for us. And if you see here, it shows Azure AD B2C. So finally, we are on our tenant, which is kurarib2c.onmicrosoft.com, which is the domain name. And it shows the message, welcome to Azure Active Directory B2C. Now you see on the right hand side, there are a few very nice documentation that you can go through, register your application or built-in policies or Azure AD Graph APIs. What we are going to do is perform three things. One is register an application, add the identity providers, and create user flows. So that is a complete cycle that we are going to do. So first thing, the app registration. A default app for us is already created, but we are going to create a new registration. We will provide the name of the application. For the supported account types, we will keep it at default, which is accounts in any organizational unit or any identity provider. And here you see it will ask for the redirect URI. So we will enter https://jwt.ms. Actually, this redirect URI is the endpoint to which the user is sent by the authorization server after the authorization is complete upon the successful authorization. So in production application, it's typically the publicly accessed endpoint, but here, just for the demo purposes, we will be using the Microsoft provided URL, which is https://jwt.ms. So we are going to use that. And for the permissions, we will keep the grant admin consent to OpenID and offline access permissions checked. So once that is complete, we will just click on register to register our new application. The application is now registered and we are redirected to the test web app 1 that we just created. And then we will go to authentication, and here under web you will see the same URL which we had earlier provided, which is jwt.ms. We'll scroll down, and here we can give the logout URL. For now we don't have an application which we have developed or built. We'll leave it as blank. We'll scroll down a little more, and here there are two checkboxes. One is the access tokens and the other one, the ID tokens. If you remember, when we were discussing about the OpenID Connect, it provides two kind of tokens. One is the access token and the other one is the ID tokens. ID tokens are generally for the authentication, whereas the access token are used for the authorization, to know what kind of authorization does the user have. So we will check both of them, and once that is done, we will click on save. Now that it is saved, we'll go back again and we can see the new app registered with the name of Test Web App 1. And it has the application ID. So the first step is complete, which is register an application. As a next step, we'll go to the user flows and create new user flows. So there are three kinds of user flows. One is sign up and sign in, the other one profile editing, and then the password reset. So we'll click on sign up and sign in. This will be used by the users to sign into the application, or if they are new users, they can sign up using the forms provided. So we will give it a name, which is sign up and sign in. We'll keep it simple. So after giving the name, we'll scroll down a little and it will ask us to select at least one identity provider. So we will check the email sign up and then scroll down. Here you will see that we have the user attributes and claims. So it actually is asking us what attributes to be collected and what claims to be returned. So here only a few of them are shown, but we can click on show more and it will open the whole plethora of attributes which we can choose from. So I will click on almost all the attributes to be collected, and for the claims to be returned, I will choose the display name, the email addresses, the given name, the identity provider access token, and then click on OK. So I have a set of attributes that will be collected for me when the user signs up, and also the set of attributes that are returned as claims. Once that is done, I'll click on create and it will create a sign up and sign in form for me. Very easy, right? We are going to repeat this step for the remaining two forms as well. But before that, let's check what we did. So we created a sign up and sign in form, and if we click on it, we come inside. And here I can customize the pages. I have the identity providers we'll be working on later. And what we can do is we can just run the user flow and see how it works. So we will click on run user flow. I have everything set up correctly. And finally, I will hit on run user flow. So see how beautifully we get the sign in and the sign up page. It asks for a user ID and password for the application. Since I'm a new user, I can sign up for the application. So I'll click on sign up, and here it is asking me all the attributes that I just configured. It is asking me for the new password, the email address, city, country, region, display name, and whatnot, whatever we had configured earlier. Okay. At this point of time, the sign up is happening via the email address. If you remember, that was the one that we have checked earlier, right? So we will give any email address, which should be a valid email address, because that is where you will get the verification code, and you need to verify yourself that you are owning this email address. Click on send the verification code. Once we have it, we will enter the verification code and then verify. Once verified, it will show me an option to change the email and ask me for further details. So I can create a password for myself, confirm the password that we had given, put the other details like my city, the country that I live in, my name, and all the other details. So I'll just quickly fill in the form and then submit it to get the access. So the form is filled. I'll click on create. It will take a moment, and this is the page I was talking about, which is jwt.ms. If you see here, it will return the tokens as claim. If you notice, it shows the name, the given name, and the other details like emails. So I can have one or more email addresses. It shows me as an array of email address. Since that's the only email address, it still shows me inside the square braces. I can click on the claims. If you scroll down a little, It shows the emails, the name, the given name. So whatever we were seeing earlier, the same thing is being shown, what is returned as claims. And it says that these tokens are issued by Azure AD B2C. We'll close that and come back. Create a new user flow, which is profile editing. Here again, I'm going to put the name for the form, which is profile editing. And I will check the local account sign-in because that is acting as an identity provider. Again, I have a set of attributes and the claims. So what actually is this? This is something which gets collected and returned in the same way that we did earlier. So these are the ones that as an end user, you will get to change your profile details. So if you want to change your address, if you want to change your city, country, region, or any other detail that you would like to change, it will allow to do. If you see certain attributes cannot be changed, like email addresses, that makes sense, right? You will not change your email addresses. Similarly, the given name, although the given name can be changed, but I'll not take that as an attribute. So once I have done that, I'll click on create and it will quickly create the profile editing form for us. So for the testing purposes, I will go into the profile editing user flow and I will test it in the similar way that I did for sign up and sign in. I click on run user flow and see here the interface is a little different. It will ask me to sign in. And here I can give the email address and the password that I created during the sign up option. So I'll use that email address and password and click on sign in. And here you can see that it is giving me the attributes that I can change. So whatever attribute I gave for collection will be shown here. I can change my address, right? I can go to a new location. So I will change my postal code and I might get promoted. So I can change my job title as well. So I have provided the job title as Cloud Architect and I'll click on Continue. If I scroll down on the page that returns the identity tokens and the claims, it will show the updated information. It shows the job title as Cloud Architect and the postal code, the one that I changed. So I'll quickly close this, cancel, and return back to create the new user flow for password reset. Again, it's the same process. We are going to give this form a name, which is the password reset. Scroll down and reset password using the email address. I'll check that initially. For us, we are not using the multi-factor authentication. And here you see we just have the return claims. So I'll select almost everything and then click on create. The form has been created for us and I can click on the password reset form and then run the user flow. Click on run user flow again to see how exactly it works. It shows us a form where we can give the email address that we use for registration and profile editing, and it will send me the verification code. So once I have the verification code, I'll enter that and click on verify code. After the validation has passed, it will enable two buttons. One is the change email address and the other one is the password reset. So we'll click on continue and we have the option to change our password. We'll quickly change our password and click continue again and we'll be returned with the tokens that we had selected again during the form creation. So we will close this and all the three user flows has been created for us. Next one is I will be registering the identity provider. So one, we are going to use the OpenAuth 2.0 and also we are going to use OpenID Connect. But to enable this application to be using the Azure Active Directory, the OpenID accounts, we are going to switch our directory to the Azure Active Directory tenant and not the B2C tenant. So we will switch that and we'll go to the Azure Active Directory and register an app. On this page, we are going to give it a name, which is Kurari B2C app. And for supported account types, we will let the account in this organizational directory only selected because we are not going to make this a multi-tenant application. This is in fact a single tenant, single directory application, and the other one, OAuth2, we will be using the Facebook. But since we only have one Azure Active Directory, that is where the identities will be authenticated. So we are going to select the first option. And again, it is asking me for the redirect URI. So what we are going to do is build the redirect URI for our application. Here we need to use the organization name that we used during the creation of the tenant. So basically it's the tenant name, and the tenant name is Kurari B2C for our case. So we will be using the tenant name dot b2clogin.com slash, again, the tenant name dot onmicrosoft.com. So it is Kurari B2C dot onmicrosoft.com, a forward slash, and then the OAuth2 and forward slash again, and then auth RESP, which is AUTH RESP, and that's the URL. So we will copy this and we will use this as the redirect URI. So what it will do is, after it has authenticated, it will redirect the user to our B2C tenant using the URL that we just provided. So our app has been registered in the Azure Active Directory, and it shows me the application ID. So we will copy this application ID and put it in a notepad. We will also create a client secret and copy that detail as well, because these details are to be used later when we are configuring the identity providers for authentication and authorization. So I have copy pasted the Azure AD app ID. I'll minimize this and then I'll go to certificates and secrets. There I'll create a new client secret. Here I can give any name. So I'll give it a name Azure AD B2C app. For the expires, I'll keep it as 1 year and then click on add. Once we have our client secret, we need to copy this and paste it again. See, remember one thing. If you do not copy the client secret now, it will not be shown again. And it's not that you cannot create it again. It's just that you will have to unnecessarily go through the same process again. So just to avoid, I have copy pasted the client secret. So this is for the Azure Active Directory, and this app registration basically will be acting as an identity provider for our Azure AD B2C application that we created in the B2C tenant. Next step, we'll also create a Facebook app which will act as an identity provider for our B2C application. So here we have different types of apps. We have the Messenger app, the Instagram, business tools and whatnot, but we'll scroll up and we'll click on My Apps and then click on Create Apps. I'll give this a name. Let's give this name as Test Azure B2C. Confirm that I'm not a robot. Submit it. And then we get started with the creation. I have the app ID. I will be needing this information. So first things first, let me copy this application ID. Once that is done, I'll click on Settings and then click on Basic. Here it shows me the same app ID since we have already copied it. Now we need to copy the app secret. So I can click on Show. It will ask me for my password. So I'll give my Facebook password and then click on Submit. So it will show me the app secret. I'll copy it and then paste it in the notepad. Again, this combination of Facebook app ID and the client secret will be used to register for the identity and the authentication purposes. For the category, we will choose business and pages and then scroll down. And here we have the option to add the platform. I'll click on it and then choose the second option, which is website. And if you see here, I have additional option for the site URL. I'm asked for the URL of the web application. So I'll copy the initial part of the URL that I had shown earlier, which is kurari-b2c.b2clogin.com. And once that is done, I will click on save and the form will be saved for me. Then I'll click on the products plus sign and click on the setup button under Facebook login. It actually shows me 4 different options for the platform: the web, the iOS, the Android and others. But we are going to click on the settings. We will scroll down and it asks me for the valid OAuth redirect URIs. It's the same URI that I used for the Azure AD tenant. So I'll copy everything from here and then paste it in the valid OAuth redirect URIs and then click on save changes. The information is now saved. So now I'll try to make this application live, but it is not allowing me because it needs a privacy URL. So for the demo purposes, we will provide any URL, but it should be a valid URL. I have provided www.kurari.com and saved the changes. And once that is done, I can change from in development to online. And now my application is in the live mode. So it will ask me for the confirmation and I can click on switch mode and my application goes live. After this is done, I'll return back to my Azure portal. I will go back to Kurari B2C tenant. So I'm here again and I'll go to identity providers where I will register both Azure Active Directory and as well as the Facebook. So we have different options here. If you see, we have Amazon, we have Facebook, GitHub, Google, LinkedIn and whatnot. But let's focus on the Azure AD first. We'll click on new OpenID Connect provider and in the pop-up that opens, we are going to give it a name, which is Kurari B2C AD. We need to enter the metadata URL. So what is a metadata URL? Actually, the metadata URL is the login.microsoftonline.com URL, which is used for authentication. And then we need to provide the directory name, which is kurari.onmicrosoft.com/well-known, which is well-known, and then /OpenID-configuration. And then I'll put in the application ID and the client secret that I had saved earlier for the Azure Active Directory. For the scope and the resource type, I'll let it remain as OpenID and code. The request mode as form_post. But for the user ID, display name, given name, surname and email, we are going to provide the names which will be matched to the tokens that will be returned. So for user ID, it is OID, display name is name, given name is given_name, then family_name, unique_name, each one for given name and the email addresses. Once that is done, I'll click on save. Oops, that again was a problem. Let me scroll up and see what's the problem is. Oh, here I provided 2C in Microsoft. So I'll remove one of them and click on save again. So this is done. What we are going to do now is we will register the Facebook also as the identity provider application for our B2C application. So we will give this a name, which is Facebook ID. And for the client ID, we will be providing the application ID that we had copied. Same is the client secret. We will provide those details and then click on save. So at this point of time, we have created 2 identity providers for our B2C application. One is the Azure AD and the other one is the Facebook. Now that we have created these 2 identity providers and mapped them, let us go to the user flow again and see how it works. So the first thing we are going to do inside the sign up and sign in form is to go to the identity providers, and here we see 2 more options. One is for the Facebook and the second one for OpenID Connect. We will select both of them and click on save. This is done. So what we can do is now click on run user flow, see how this form is behaving now. So here you go. Earlier, it was asking for signing in, and then for the sign up window, it was just showing the email address. Now it shows the Active Directory and the Facebook ID that we can use for signing in. So if we click on Facebook, if you have already logged in, it will ask you to authorize that this particular application wants to collect your details, and would you like to share or not? This is so general. I can click on yes, and then it will ask me the same details that we configured during the sign up and sign in form configuration. So I'll quickly fill up the form and show you how it works. So rest of the details, if you see, it gets from the Facebook application. So I don't need to fill those. I'll just quickly fill in the details which are not available. I'll put in EA for Enterprise Architect. I'll give in some postcode, and I'll put the state code, which is TX, and then I'll put in my address and the city and click on continue. Again, we are redirected to the jwt.ms page, and you see that all those details that I filled in is returned to me as the tokens. And one important thing is, if you note here, the IDP is facebook.com, and this IDP is nothing but the identity provider. We can close the window and come back to the Azure portal, and let us repeat the process and see how it works for the Azure AD. So I'll click on Kurari B2C AD, and it will ask me for the username and password. I'll use some other user, say neeraj@kurari.com, and then click on sign in. And it shows me a form for permissions requested. I'll click on accept, and it opens the same form again, asking me for the details to be stored for this particular application. I'll not go through the same process of filling in, so I'll close the window and I'll come back. And that is how the OAuth 2.0 and OpenID works. We saw how to configure these identity providers using the Azure AD, which acted as the identity provider for the B2C tenant application that we registered, and also how the Facebook app acted as the identity provider for our application. So that concludes our demo for this module. So finally, we are at the end of this module. What did we discuss? We discussed about the modern authentication, about OAuth 2.0, and about OpenID Connect. We discussed how OAuth 2.0 provides the authorization and does not have the authentication mechanism built, whereas the OpenID Connect provides both authentication as well as the authorization. We then had a quick demo where we deployed a B2C tenant and registered a B2C application. Once that was done, we used Azure AD and the Facebook app to act as the identity provider for this particular application that we deployed. I hope you enjoyed this session as much as I did being your instructor. You can download the training material from azuretraining.com, and you can follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn. My Twitter handle is @mstechtrainings, whereas the URL to my LinkedIn account is given. I'll see you in the next session. Till then, keep azuring.